How to flare. This is the move that makes you an advanced breakdancer. You will have to train a lot for this move. The flare requires you to be good in 3 things at once: strength, flexibility, and technique. There are 3 main types of strength flare will test you on: wrist, shoulder, and ab strength, so you can lift your legs above your hips. Wrist strength. You need to be able to support your weight with your hands, so do these: wrist push-ups, false grip on bar, and false grip on rings. Shoulder strength. In the flare, you are on your wrists and your shoulders do most of the heavy lifting, so do the following exercises. Keep your legs and arms straight and extend your wrists, having your fingertips touch the ground first. Get in the habit of placing your wrists down on the ground instead of slamming them. It will prevent pain and injury when attempting the flare later. We will always do these both directions. Ag walks. Keep your hips high. Do not let your butt drop. You need to be good at this and the walrus walks before moving on. Handstands. Handstands are a good way to start general conditioning for flare. Be able to walk around in all the directions and hold a handstand for a minute using a wall. Pike walks and holds. This is what gymnasts call a pike. We are going to hold the hardest part of the handstand press and get strong in our weakest position. I will explain what a handstand press is in the next part. But for now, remember that this will take a lot of effort to get. You don't have to be able to do this for flare, but it will decrease the struggling when you are learning the technique. Handstand press. Ideally, you should be able to do a few of these. They will help you lift your body in the back part of the flare. Keep your legs straight and push hard with your shoulders. If you can do 5 of these, you are doing great. These can take a few months of training to develop. They are not easy, but neither is flare, and handstand presses make flare a little bit easier. You don't have to do this for flares, but it will solve a lot of problems if you can do it. Tucked planche hold. A good exercise that helps with the strength you need for the back part of the flare. If you can do 3 10-second holds, you're good. L-sits. L-sits work your hip flexors. A fancy way of saying it holds your legs up. The higher your L-sits are, the better your flares will be. It increases leg dexterity or leg control. Think about it. Something has to hold your legs up when you flare. Tabletop leg circles work your shoulders, but it's meant for you to get better leg control and mimic parts of the flare. I do 5 circles clockwise and counterclockwise. You will feel the same muscles working as in the L-sit. Side raise leg hold. The last leg control exercise. You will notice a big gap between how flexible your leg is and how high you can hold it. For example, I can hold a split, but I can barely hold my leg above my hips. This is a big problem for me with my flares, and you can see why. This is what makes flare a pain to master, is excelling at this type of strength. Victorian. This works strength and flexibility, but I think it works strength more. Push your hips up really high. I feel it most of my triceps and do 5 to 10-second holds 3 times. The closer your hands are to the wall, the higher your hips can go. Flexibility. All of this is previously covered, but here are the highlights. There are 4 types of flexibility. Passive, where the muscle is relaxed when you're stretching it. Isometric, where the muscle is flexed when you're stretching it. Static active, where the opposite muscle is flexed to raise the leg. And dynamic, where the stretching muscle is moving through a range of motion continuously. A fancy way of saying kicking. Wrists. The easiest and most important muscle to stretch are the wrists. You need to be able to hold them flat so you aren't hyperextending when you do flare. Do these exercises. Shoulders. You need to do skin the cats so you have the flexibility to get your hips high. The ring version is the best, but you can do them on the ground and on a bar as well. hiking on a raised platform. This is worthwhile in the beginning to really develop flexibility and strength for the front part of the flare. Just get your feet behind your head and raise your hips as high as you can. Legs. Leg flexibility allows your legs to kick your face and shoulder, raising your hips off the ground when doing the flare. It helps with all of your other breakdancing as well. Always start your stretching routine with dynamic kicks. I do 20 per leg, and I do the following: front, side, and back raises. Then I do flare kicks. These are harder, but it's important for flare. V raises work your hip flexors. The farther forward your hands are, the harder it is. If it is too difficult, start with raising one leg at a time. After dynamic stretching, I do isometric holds. I hold the sumo squat with my feet pointed outwards. Then I hold a deep squat for 30 seconds each. If everything feels good, and after those 2 holds, I do 3 1-minute isometric side split holds. For the front split, I hold a deep lunge for 30 seconds on each leg. If everything feels good, I do 3 1-minute front split holds. Ideally, you want to hold your splits at least 1 minute a week to maintain. Now that you know how to get strong and flexible, you can make your body do what you want it to do. Now you can focus on learning the technique. There are lots of ways of learning the technique. Here are a few that I use with my students. 6-step is the ultra basic way to learn flare hand placement. The hand and hip motion is the same for 6-step and flare. You should be able to do 6-step perfectly and not get tired as a basic preparation for flare. Flare positions. Hold these positions and get comfortable in them. Flex your legs and push with your shoulders. As a beginner, these are helpful, but as you progress in your training, you can omit these holds and work on other drills. Butt on the ground. You can do this in the beginning when you are most confused about what your legs need to do in the front part of flare. This will slow down the move and test your leg mobility. Back half of flare. Test your shoulder and leg mobility by working the back half of the flare. This is a safe and slow method that forces you to have good technique. Double leg circles. Training double leg circles will speed up the flare learning process if you have access to one. Double leg circles are great because they remove the leg control from flare, so you can focus on shoulder strength, hand placement, and hip height. Most gymnastic facilities have these, and it is worth paying to use one. You can make your own also if you buy a gymnastic spotting belt and stick it in a bucket. You can also use it on the ground. Flare machine. The flare machine is the grandmaster of cheating. It holds each leg and lets you slow the move down. If you are serious about learning flares fast, you have to make one of these. I made it to learn flare in the opposite direction so I could combo my windmill and headspin. Starting the flare. If you don't have access to a flare machine or double leg circle training, you can still learn flares. Most people learn it by just struggling a lot on the ground. Spread your legs so your hips are the same height as you want them in your flare. Swing your leg into a flare kick. Get really good at this because this is the start of the flare. Now you can start attempting flares. It's easy to overexplain this move, but think of it this way. One leg is kicking or driving and the other leg is holding. So when you start the flare, you flare kick into a hold while the other leg drives or kicks into a hold, then repeats. It takes a lot of air time to get a feel for this move, which takes a lot of attempts. Once you can perform the front part of the flare, you connect it with the back half that you have been practicing. Once you master both the front and back half, you probably have a flare. There are no secrets, and the only shortcuts are using a flare machine and training double leg circles. You can expect a lot of struggling, failing, and frustration when learning this. Feedback. Why can't you flare? You need to be able to answer that after every failure. You need feedback. Get a coach, someone to watch you, or record yourself so you can see exactly what you are doing wrong. Here are the usual reasons you can't flare. Your hips are too low. There are a few reasons for low hips, but the main ones are lack of shoulder flexibility and bad leg drive because you can't kick high with control. To fix it, train your skin the cat more and do more leg raises and L-sits. Your legs aren't wide enough, sometimes caused by bad technique, but usually by bad side and front split flexibility. Your legs aren't straight and high. This is usually caused by bad side and front split flexibility and bad leg mobility strength. Get your splits and do more slow and controlled leg raises and L-sits. Hips drop in the back part of the flare, usually caused by weak shoulders and bad leg drive. Get better at the handstand press, do more leg raises, and master the back half of the flare drill. Can't do the front half of the flare. There are two main culprits, weak shoulders and not being able to kick your leg to your shoulder. Practice your Victorians and flare positions more and get your front split and do more front leg raises and flare kicks. Conclusion, get strong, get flexible, train hard, record yourself, and learn from your mistakes. Most of your flare problems can be solved by training and practicing more. Remember, nobody regretted giving 100%.